All right, this is Lewis from Screw Big Gub, just checking in with you. Folks, we have an amazing show with Loy Brunson today. Can you give me a 5-5 if you can hear us and see us? That would be awesome. We know we've had some significant delays on Rumble lately, so that would help us out tremendously. Give me a 5-5 if you can hear and see us just perfectly. And then we'll go from there. Let's see what, there's a delay, a significant one today. But that's par for the course lately. Still waiting, guys, for any response to make sure. Okay, I see us, so that's a good sign. Just now popped on screen. If you could hear us, just clicking a 5-5 in the chat message, I'd really appreciate it. This is where I should play the Jeopardy song. We're waiting. And let me check my other browser. Got a 5-5. Thank you. That's what I'm talking about. So now we're ready to rock and roll. All right, folks. Well, while you're hopping in here, this is a beautiful day. We've got the amazing Loy Brunson with us. Has a fantastic story. I'm sure everybody knows, if you've been dealing with me for a while, I constantly say it's up to we the people need to get active and get this stuff done. And Loy is definitely working hard to do everything he can to get this done. So let's start off with a song to give you guys a chance to come on in here, and then we're going to have a really spirited, very, very good discussion, I have a feeling. So let's get us started with a song to get you guys to roll in here. And you know, one of my favorites is Nat King Cole. So I figured this would be a good song. Excellent. At the end, you said one of my favorite phrases, so I'm just writing it down because we'll touch on that. Well, first, I really appreciate you being here. Full transparency to the audience, I followed the first case, 22-380, really close. I broke it down. I went all through it, told people what to watch for. I had them send in letters, so on and so forth. I've just been so busy with my documentary. I haven't spent much time on this, but I've been hearing a lot about it. I can also tell you there's, from the truther community and our audience, there's going to be some controversy on both sides, which you're fully aware of also, which we'll get into. But if we can talk about, I'd like to give people a foundation. Maybe not everybody here knows you or knows what's going on, because it's a fantastic story. So if you can kind of give me some background on how we got to this point, I'd appreciate it. And I'm sure my audience would as well.
Sure. Well, my brothers and I were really disappointed before allowing an investigation to happen. You have over 100 members of the U.S. House and U.S. Senate present a mountain of evidence, and they weren't asking for not certifying. They weren't asking for not to be certified, simply asking for a 10-day investigation. And it had happened before in history where they paused for an investigation. They should have done that. And so because they didn't do that, we decided to bring some legal action against those that failed to go along with a 10-day investigation. Mm-hmm. So my brother had quite a bit of experience suing banks having to do with the subprime mortgage bundling. And so he, as a representing himself, learned how to file lawsuits in state and federal court. And he was able to appeal and go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court twice. He had some successes. So he knew how to do something like file some kind of a complaint. So he called me on the phone and asked me if I'd be the plaintiff. I said, absolutely. So that's how it got going. He asked me because I've been studying and publishing my discoveries in the Constitution. I'm focused on clauses that have been completely overlooked for over 200 years. And so because of that, and speaking about the Constitution, he asked me if I'd be the plaintiff. And so that was the main lawsuit that got stuck in federal court. So while that was stuck, my other brother decided to file a lawsuit himself, thought that was a good idea. to see if he could get to the Supreme Court first. And he did. He made it to the Supreme Court because they had different judges. He learned what we learned with my case. And then just a few weeks ago, my case finally became available to take to the Supreme Court. The federal court had not only had they sat on it, but when I first filed it, the court actually ordered the U.S. Marshal Service to serve 388 defendants. My summons and complaint included President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Mike Pence, and 385 others. So on March 31st, 2021, the U.S. Marshal Service began serving my summons and complaint on Capitol Hill. And after about 84 were served, which included Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Adam Schiff, and 81 others, the next day, the federal judge, an Obama appointee, canceled my complaint and recalled the service and classified it as deficient. Well, we knew enough about litigation that judge can't do that. A judge has immunity, but it's limited. And when he crosses over into the administrative side of the court, he can be sued and they can be liable. So we knew this, that they had just committed a pretty big wrong, mistake. So we complained to the appellate court, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, telling them that the lower court kind of goofed up here, would like them to straighten the court out. Well, they backed up the lower court and they said they didn't unfile your case. It's like, you didn't even read the pleadings. They said that they're just backlogged. So we took both courts. We sued the Federal Court of Utah and the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in state court. And so we battled there for a while. And here was an opportunity for the judge to do something very historical, because the U.S. attorneys were complying with the state court judge. They even told the judge that if the judge were to rule in our favor of the full summary judgment motion that we had filed, which means we had enough evidence that they had given us through my brother's case, they admitted wrongdoing. They were just claiming immunity. So we had enough evidence for the judge to make a decision in our favor without even a trial. So the U.S. attorneys were asking the state court judge, please give us an extension if you're going to rule in favor of Brunson. So here's a state court judge with an incredible amount of power, probably more power than any state court judge has ever had in the history of this country. And so the judge kind of cowered and ruled in their favor, but we still won, because a few weeks later, the judge and the federal court decided to do what we were suing them to do. And so they actually ordered the issuing of my summons. They refiled my case, issued the summons. The U.S. attorneys came on to battle with us, and we battled for a while, and then the judge sat on it for a year. Well, a few weeks ago, the judge finally made a decision which allowed us to either appeal it to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals or to go to the Supreme Court under their Rule 11. Now, if we send it to the Supreme Court under their Rule 11, we have to prove to the court has to agree that it is of, quote, imperative public importance. In other words, a national emergency. So if they don't agree that it is of that caliber, then they send it back and they say, just battle it out with the 10th Circuit. So we were very anxious and prayerful. And a few days later, we kept checking the docket. We saw that they had docketed this under Rule 11. So you can go to supremecourt.gov and check that out, 22-1028. And you'll see the first ever in the history of the United States, a pro se litigant successfully having a Rule 11 Supreme Court petition for writ of certiorari docketed in the Supreme Court. The last time any Rule 11 was allowed to be docketed was in the 70s by the federal government. So this is historical. Now people say, well, gosh, the first one, was denied twice. It's like, and over 70,000 people have written letters supporting the first one. Public awareness is super important. So we have a good feeling, and a lot of people do right now, that with this second attack, I guess you could say, with the second petition, that the justices with enough public support would set a date for a hearing. Now, right now, we are at the point where the Solicitor General on the 24th waived her defendant's rights to oppose this petition. She filed a waiver. So now the court will set a date for a conference. So we're just checking the docket every day to see a date for a conference. Now, they adjourned the last part of June, so we might see a conference date for October. But meanwhile, we're just hoping that people will go to loybrunson.com. The volunteers have put that together to show how to simply do a letter by themselves, or if they want to do digitally, they can do it, write their own message, sign their name with a mouse, is very clear with the words, they shall be bound by oath to this Constitution. Well, they've given themselves immunity. They've admitted wrongdoing to the U.S. attorneys, but they've given themselves immunity. So how can you have a binding oath and have immunity? It just doesn't make any sense. So sending a letter is critical and a fantastic opportunity to participate in history right now, do something historical that'll last forever. And it's also of the United States. And those who refuse to participate in a 10-day investigation and ramrod it through into a certification before that, they are guilty of violating their oath of office. And they created this security breach, as I mentioned in the video, and that needs to be fixed. So we're asking the courts to remove their credentials, to cancel their credentials. And that, if they would do that, that would open up a tremendous amount of opportunity for campaigns, for candidates to take their place as candidates that are willing to take a constitutional oath, a binding oath, and stick to that.
So based on history, great example is, I'm sure you've probably been following the Kari Lake cases in Arizona. And the last case with Kari Lake, I believe the judge came back and said, hey, we'll look at these signature verification that you said and so on and so forth. But when the rubber hits the road, it's like, oh, but you can't go ahead and look at the ballots yourself to see if there any value there. Therefore, that was a loss. My position, based on studying these, I'm just going to say it, you don't have to say it, these corrupt judges and a corrupt system, and I have evidence of this, that was a setup. They already knew what the outcome was going to be, and it actually was intentional to make it look like Kari Lake has another loss. Like, oh, we tried, but now she has another loss. I think she was set up for that to happen. And ironically, the documentary we're doing is focusing on Arizona. So I've been doing a lot of investigation in Arizona. What we have found in most states, this really started happening after with Prohibition. And what happened is the cops used to be bought off by the cabal. You would pay off all the cops and so on and so forth. They learned that if they focus on the governor, the state, the secretary of state, the attorney general, and just a few judges, they control the whole system. And we've seen it. If you've talked to Mike Gill has evidence of this. I have evidence of this. Is exactly what happens. So having that background, which I know you are very aware of, what gives you confidence that you can have a positive decision within the Supreme Court? Because just my assumption is there's got to be corruption there also.
Sure. Well, we had a positive result in the federal court. Remember, the federal court unfiled my case. They blocked it in every way possible that they could block it. And we, with our lawsuits and complaints, showed them how they were violating their oath. They were violating the Constitution. They were violating my civil rights, my due process rights protected in the state and federal Constitution. And apparently they started realizing their liability. Now, I think that their biggest protection is our ignorance. And so I've encouraged Kari Lake to take this to the U.S. Supreme Court, and maybe she could under Rule 11. She's gone to the state Supreme Court. Maybe she should take it right to the whole thing to the U.S. Supreme Court under Rule 11. Imperative public importance, which her case is of. And so, and it's more than what will they do. It's about awareness. It's about, until we filed our case, people thought that it was impossible to bring a case like ours into state or federal court, because normally if we'd gone to a law firm, they would have said, well, we've got to get permission from the sergeant at arms. We've got to file in a special claims court. You can't do it in state or federal court. So the whole legal profession would have not allowed us to do it the way we did it. And so when the federal court was trying to unfile our case and block our case, that was their struggle. They're going, these guys shouldn't even be here. What are we going to do? And they tried and they failed to block it, that they didn't want it to go to the Supreme Court. And so now it's there. And now for the Supreme Court to allow it to be docketed under Rule 11, I think at least one justice has to make a decision for something like that to happen. Now, the justices have never in their careers seen a Rule 11 docketed, because the last one that was docketed was in the 70s. back off and we don't fight. This is the only way we know to fight.
Mhm.
And it's exciting to see the awareness. You know how many people didn't realize that Article 6 demanded a binding oath and that they've given themselves immunity?
That's right.
State statutes actually, check California, state statutes actually, and their perjury statutes exclude politicians and the oath of office. So it is so blatant. It's like Jesus said, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. If we don't know the contract, how can we enforce it? If we don't know what is in the Constitution and what clauses we can use to hold them accountable, how can we expect an accountable representative or accountable government? So another thing about this petition and lawsuit, it's really, it's not partisan. It's multi-partisan or nonpartisan. It's about, do you want honest representation or not? If you do, send a letter to the court, and let's start demanding that these people follow Article 6, which has not been amended out of existence, that absolutely requires a binding oath. So we're on to them. So the exposure to this is sort of like we're showing what they're doing, that they've been hiding behind this immunity, which is completely unconstitutional. So we're asking for the justices to fix this problem.
So you actually mentioned what this is my personal feel of what the most important thing about both these cases are, 22-380 and -1028, is the word exposure. And I think because a few people get frustrated with me because I do have a belief system that there is maybe let's say a white hat operation or something working in the background trying to help us stuff. I do have some evidence and belief of that. But I'm also probably the number one person trumpeting that we, the people, have to get involved and engaged, or this thing's not going to happen. So I personally believe the biggest benefit of this has nothing to do with the outcome, and it has everything to do with people understanding the way the systems should work and how you can hold government accountable. And if there's an illegitimate decision, that's just more exposure of the corruption in the system. What's your thought on that?
Absolutely. Now, the military is part of we the people. We've had some military reach out to us where they've said, wow, this is like an awakening to how powerful the Constitution can be. And when Jesus said, you shall know the truth shall make you free, I think we could interpret that as, if we don't know the truth, if we don't know the power that we have with the binding oath, and as long as that's in place, if we don't understand the power of that, then we can't be free. So knowledge is power. And as we show a mutual connected support, as we unifyingly send letters to the Supreme Court, they've taken oaths too. The justices take two constitutional oaths. One is a judicial oath that includes the Constitution. The other one's very similar to the congressional oath, which also includes the Constitution. So the petition and also the complaints, they are exposés on the constitutionality of a binding oath, the Constitution, expose on the Constitution. So Thomas Jefferson said, the true corrective for constitutional abuse is education. So let's start with knowing that the oath is binding and the clause in the Constitution that demands it. I've even encouraged people to, when they go to a town hall meeting, ask the candidate if they're willing to sign a congressional oath with the words at the end of it saying under penalties of perjury. Actually sign it. Maybe you print something out and ask them to sign it between you and them. And if they're willing to do it, you might have a real candidate there. If they're not, then you might have a problem. And that's been the problem. I think this is the Achilles heel, really. And when America wakes up to the binding oath, that is the beginning of the floodgates opening to hold our representatives' feet to the fire.
Yeah, I do agree. So with that, your hope is that it will get seen sooner, but your expectation is maybe October, November. Is that what you're looking at?
If it's October, I feel like it's an act of God. It gives us that much time to rally the troops together. You know, the pen is mightier than the sword. And that's what we say is your letter is mightier than the sword. Be a part of history. Show your grandkids a few years from now that you participated in this incredible once in a lifetime opportunity, historical opportunity to support the Constitution in a unique way. It'll never come again, in my opinion, like this.
Have you been blown away about how many Republicans are actually completely?
It's really disappointing, and it's pressure, I believe. Now, in 2010, my brothers and I produced a little documentary. It was called The Oath of Office, the thread by which the Constitution hangs. And Mike Lee, our US Senator, he was the first person I interviewed. And I said, what's the penalty for breaking the oath of office? And he basically said that unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be one. And so it's like, but there should be. And it's like, well, let's wake up to this. The Constitution has not been changed. It's there. And if the people can wake up to this, we can enforce it. And that's the goal with the justices. Now, 3 of the justices in past have actually supported Trump appointed justices. So timing is everything. They had a first opportunity. This is a second opportunity for them to make the right decision. A lot of things are happening, but I think the only thing missing right now is public support. I feel like the justices absolutely would do something in a super positive way with this petition if they felt support from we, the people, from the public. So that's what we're working on is working with people like you to get the word out there. President Trump, truth and we truth and art of it. And he was positive about it. So we're reaching out to him to see if he will encourage people to write letters to the Supreme Court. And what a great way to be introduced to the Constitution with that powerful clause, they shall be bound by oath to this Constitution. What a great introduction to the Constitution in an applicable, relevant way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think it's just another way to get people educated on the Constitution. Just like I tell my friends, if you want to get educated on laws and orders, talk to Derek Johnson or go look at his stuff. It's incredible stuff. He and I would disagree. I think Derek would think there's no meat on the bone here with what you're doing. And I think that works symbiotically together, actually, because I believe we the people have to wake up to the way the system works, right?
Yeah.
You said something I agree with, and it turned my stomach at the same time. You said if there's enough public recognition of this, almost public pressure, maybe the justices would make the right decision. I agree, and it sickens me at the same time, because that should never be a basis for their decision making, although I believe it is often.
Yeah. Well, they do work for us, we the people. And if they don't feel the support, they're less likely to make the proper decision. Now, for someone to say there's no meat on the bones, it goes back to what we're both saying. Public awareness is huge and extremely important, and understanding the process. And so take away this opportunity to learn about the Constitution and the power in it. We don't want to do that. We want to encourage people to learn more about the Constitution. Now, Barack Obama inspired me to start studying the Constitution when he said that the foundation of it was fundamentally flawed. Mm-hmm. If he were my defense attorney, I would have him fired, and and I would immediately sue him for malpractice. But if I could find an attorney to do that, because they don't generally do that, right? And so my study of the Constitution, I found things that had never been published before. And I thought I was discovering these concepts. I thought everyone knew them. And then I met with the owner of the largest publisher of the Pocket Constitution in the world, and I shared my concepts. And he said, we've never heard this before. We would like to see these published. And one of those concepts is in the document that are just incredible. Well, for example, the first 10 amendments were defined by Congress as further declaratory and restrictive clauses. They are amendments, but you cannot find a publication in existence that showed any parts of the 7 articles were changed or amended by the first 10 amendments. Why is that? Well, I discovered that there were changes, but they've been ignored. But one of my discoveries is that there's an interpretation clause in the Constitution that demands the Constitution only be interpreted in ways that protect our God-given unalienable rights. Mm-hmm. And like I said, the first 10 were defined by Congress as further declaratory and restrictive clauses. And the 9th Amendment is one sentence. And it goes like this: the enumeration and the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. When I read that, I thought, this is the voice of God, and the Constitution shall not sounds like one of the commandments, right? I call it the Trump clause, the interpretation clause. And as we get more familiar with the document, the more power we'll have, and the more knowledge we have, the more God can help us. He cannot help us if we don't know we're enslaved. He cannot help us if we don't know we have a problem. We have to recognize the problem, and then we have to use the tools that he's given us. And the Constitution, this is available at my website, 7discoveries.com. It has those discoveries in it. And so once we become familiar, and I've experienced this, just asking people about the oath of office is a tremendous step forward with representatives, reminding them that they have one. And so let's save the Constitution, let's save the oath of office, and let's get the justices to do something positive. But I'm excited that they're reading the petitions are required to do, because the petition and the complaints are an expose on the Constitution. This is a fantastic way to expose and celebrate and uphold the Constitution of the United States. So if someone says there's no meat on it, they're just thinking of one little aspect of it. And gosh, who would ever fight a battle if they believed that there was no meat in a battle, you know? Right. And there was, some people, some famous people have said the only causes worth fighting for are the lost causes. I think that was in a Jimmy Stewart movie, right? And it's like, gosh, give me liberty or give me death. It's like, well, you're not going to get liberty. Well, so what? I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to stay in the battle. I'm not going to withdraw because I think there's no meat or because I don't think that it's a lost battle. It's like, hey, what are the alternatives? I'm not going to go down not fighting. That's for sure. And we're going to look at every possible way we can fight back. And that's why we've had 4 lawsuits to pursue this, what we're doing.
So your main goal right now is to get as many people to sign these letters, go to your website, take care of that. What are you doing in I would assume there's some preparatory phase that you're really working hard until this gets seen or heard. So what are you doing to prepare for that in the meantime?
Well, it's really the letter campaign. We've done all the work. We're not allowed to do anything before conference. The only people that are allowed to do something are the defendants, and they waive their right to do anything. They had one right to file an opposition, and they waived that right on the 24th. So the next few days, we should see a date on the docket for conference. So I'm just going to go full speed ahead to encourage people to go to loybrunson.com or just write a letter. The instructions to write a letter are at the website. I'm working on getting in touch with President Trump. He's familiar with the first case. I don't know if he is with this one. He's been positive about it, truthing and retruthing. And so that's what I'm doing with all my energy is helping people understand there's an opportunity here to support a good outcome and also to become more acquainted with the power in the Constitution and to defend it.
And do you have a plan C after this one, or D or E? Or is
well, we're always fighting. Okay, my brother has a lawsuit right now that is against 3 of the liberal justices in federal court, so he's battling there, and we're always looking for more opportunities to increase exposure, support and defend the Constitution, and to encourage a positive outcome with the justices. But we're not going to quit fighting. And I've been told other people have been starting to file lawsuits similar to ours too. So it's kind of opening up opportunities. I've been contacted by some interesting people. One is a former member of the U.S. House for several years, and he supports the case. And he's also working on an idea to bring other people into a new case that would be very similar to this one with co-plaintiffs. So this is an army, I guess you could say, that is building here. But we feel pretty positive about what is going to happen with the conference. We're hoping for a positive outcome with a hearing, and we're just going to keep battling until we have our country back.
And what was the reason 22-380 didn't move forward? Was it
they denied to hear it. Okay, so they didn't dismiss it. They just denied hearing it at that time, and they did that twice with an appeal. Now, under Rule 11, they can take a petition off the shelf at any time they choose to do so and execute it. They can adjudicate a full complaint even after they've denied a hearing. So we're giving them ammunition, and the timing is everything. And that's why I think it's so important. We just didn't have enough. We had 70,000 people send letters. That's an awful lot, but it happened so quickly. And there's been so much that's happened since then with support and the mainstream media getting involved with exposing this case. I think there's a good chance for a hearing.
Beautiful. And then, so somebody asked a great question here. Do any of we know that we found that virtually none of Biden's cabinet signed the oath of office. Do you know if any of the justices have an oath on file as required by law?
I don't know. That's, I'm hoping that this is helping people become more aware of situations like that. Now, many years ago, my father had me come over to his house and he said, let me show you something. He showed me a picture of our mayor and city council signing their oath. And he says, you know why they're doing this? I go, why? He says, well, a few weeks ago, I discovered that they hadn't subscribed their oath, which is signing the oath. The state constitution requires they subscribe their oath, and they hadn't, and they're not officially they have not officially taken their position. So they're acting unofficially until they subscribe or sign their oath. And so he sent them a letter, and they soon sending this picture back showing them all subscribing their oath. See, again, it's about exposing. It's about you show them what they're bound to. Show them that they're bound to the Constitution. And then after you show them that, show them what the Constitution is. So this is step number one. Show them that they are bound. And believe me, the justices know they're bound after they read our petitions or our complaints. And I believe that's why the federal chief justice of the Supreme Court, an Obama appointee, is the one that reversed his decision and basically refiled my case, who brought same-sex marriage into Utah, that reversed his decision based on our pleadings. So tell me that it doesn't have meat. What we're doing exposes their liability, exposes their obligation. And believe me, they don't want to be liable in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's why they reversed their decision and hurriedly called the chief clerk of the court to immediately issue 388 summonses, which they did in a very timely fashion. It was all done within 48 hours. There was no delay on that. We got it all taken care of that way and served. So something is happening, and the justices are reading these petitions, and they're recognizing for the first time, I think, in their lives, that there's some people out there, and it's a growing movement, that are going to be aware of a binding oath. And once we're aware of it, I don't think they've realized I don't even think they realized that there was supposed to be a binding oath, to tell you the truth. Amy Coney Barrett was asked what the 5 protections were in the First Amendment. And she couldn't remember one of them, remember? And it's so ironic, because the one she couldn't remember was what? Had everything to do with the courts. Petition for redress of grievances, protected by the First Amendment. And so this is an awakening. And when people are shown their liability, shown their accountability, believe me, some of them take notice and reverse their position. So it's about knowledge, and it's about showing these people what their commitments are. And so I think the oath of office, that's the foundation of our lawsuit and our petition, is a great introduction to them, to our representatives, taking action in a way that they've never taken it before. I just want to read, this is from George Washington's address. I think it was when he left office. He said, "Let it simply be asked, where is the security for property, for reputation, for life, if the sense of moral and religious obligation desert the oaths which are the instruments of investigation in courts of justice?" Why are they instruments? Because you take an oath under penalties of perjury, and if you lie under oath, you are accountable. And if you break your oath, you're legally accountable. And that's why they are great instruments in the courts of justice. And that's what we're doing. We're taking the oath of office to the courts of justice.
And what if you find out they haven't signed an oath?
Then they're even more liable. And other people are bringing action that way. And it's great. I'm hoping that this is what inspired those kinds of things to happen. Mm-hmm. And if there was some connection here, it's like there's another win for us, that we're making things, we're exposing things that haven't been exposed before. And I hope I find out that we were part of the encouraging them to discover this and find this out. Mm-hmm. And so that creates a lot of liability. It means everything they've done in office up to that point is null and void, So we have a supreme law of the land, and as we become more aware of it, and as those who are accountable become aware of it, and they know we know, then look out. That's why another reason it's so important that we get public awareness. For Donald Trump, and maybe others too, because it's just about an honest representative government, send a letter about the oath of office. That's all it is. It's just, we want a binding oath, Can you imagine 100 million letters, what effect that would have on the justices and have on the public? I mean, it'd be absolutely game-changing. And it would set a new course of history based on knowledge, based on information, and based on the incredible power in the Constitution while we still have it.
At the beginning of our conversation here, I wrote down what I think is the most powerful thing: redress of grievances. And that's what you touched on. And that is the power of we the people right there. And you don't know this because you probably don't pay attention to my channel, but I've always talk about we the people hold all the power. Now, when I say all the power, we the people are still the military. Let's just be very clear about that. But we the people, when we rise up and put enough pressure in the right point, we do win. So I use this analogy all the time. I said, if I take a 20-pound weight, right? Let's say this is 20 pounds and set it on the crystal of my phone, nothing happens. But I can tell you what, if I take that same 20-pound weight and I put it on top of my pen, that directed pressure will break the crystal on this phone every time. And that's what's very important about what we're doing. When we, the people, can focus their attention in one direction, we have seen wins all over. We saw a win in the Board of Supervisors of Orange County. We've seen multiple wins in Shasta County over and over and over and over. I don't know if this is a win, but I do, what I do see, this is my perspective from my study, is getting people activated is extraordinarily important because build some momentum. And when we figure out that we do have all the power and it grows, we can exercise it in any fashion. So if anything, I applaud you for your efforts in driving people in this direction. And I do think it would work symbiotically, even if something is working in the background in our behalf, because without the people waking up, we're going to be right back here in 30 years, even if somebody comes in on a white Pegasus tomorrow and fixes everything.
That is right. And you know, it's amazing. You just used the pen. The sword, the pen is mightier than the sword, right? That was a great analogy there. And it's about focused pressure. So every letter that comes in the Supreme Court, you can say that represents 1,000 people. I mean, that's how people that do, you know, that you know, try to judge the value of letters to networks and stuff. They say every time you receive a letter, you got 1,000 other people out there that feel the same way. And so the letters are pretty powerful.
Yeah.
So great.
Absolutely agree. Loy, I usually play us out with a song. If you have any final message for us to we the people, let them know right now.
Sure. A great big thank you. And if you want a copy of my book with the discoveries, you can go to 7discoveries.com. And we printed extra petitions of the Rule 11, first ever in history for a pro se litigant to be able to file. So we have extra copies of those. If someone would like that, they can go to 7discoveries.com to get those.
I'll put that in the description also. I have loybrunson.com up there now. Is there a link to 7 Discoveries from your website?
There is down there at the bottom. It'll say something about 7 Discoveries at the bottom.
I see it right here. Yep, all the way at the bottom, guys. So if you go to loybrunson.com, because you want to click on the link below, just go scroll to the bottom and you'll see all about 7 Discoveries right there. That's excellent. Well, thank you for giving us your time today. I appreciate it immensely.
Well, thank you, Lewis. I'm looking forward to that great event in San Diego coming up.
Yep, the Truth Tour is there. A lot of fun. You'll get a lot of love there, and we appreciate anybody that's fighting like you are. So let's play us out with a song, and one of my favorites here. And then it takes us a few seconds after the song to clear, and then you and I could talk offline for just a minute.
Right.
What a beautiful way to end this broadcast. Loy, thank you very much for everything you do. I appreciate your time. Folks, 5 minutes from now, I will be on with Delora O'Brien and 107, which will be on her channel. I just popped the link into the chat right now, so you can hop right over there, give Delora some love. And Juan's promised me that I'll be able to speak for more than a minute and a half. We'll see. Love everybody. God bless you. Thank you for being here. And just remember, folks, we got this. Pray, manifest our destiny. We got this for sure. We the people win with God's help, of course. I think God already won, frankly. All right, let's give it a minute. We get a little bit of delay on Rumble. And let's see. I'll let you know when we're clear.